All right, so meeting is started for this council workshop where we're going to review and discuss our financial policy. We're going to get things started with your staff report.
Yes, so yeah, review and discussion of financial policies. Each year councils review cities' financial policies. This policy was not reviewed this past January. Presented at this workshop is a draft update for the policy focusing on expenditure limits and policies for staff. Additional discussion is needed for council purchasing procedures in regards to community funds, conference attendance, and other non-routine expenses. There is a small section, part in section 14 of council procedures covering councilor expenses and reimbursement that states they must follow the same policies as staff, which does not fit the situation presented to council. I did not draft any language for that. I wanted to have you guys discuss that and figure out how you wanted to govern yourselves. But I did have draft language for section 5, increasing staff expenditure limits that will not hinder day-to-day operations. And so these are some pretty good jumps. Department heads from 1,000 to 10,000, city administrator from 2,500 to 25,000. Council approves all purchases over 25,000 outside of an approved formal contract. An example would be the invoices we get for JW Fowler for the wastewater update are over $200,000. Those are a contract we've already signed with the contractor, with Business Oregon, with USDA. The purchases or expenses we know that are coming. Purchase orders are required for all capital outlay, asset, and improvement purchases outside of a formal contract. And that's regardless of price. So that may be for prices, I'm sure it's more, let's say we buy a new plow for the truck and it's $6,000. So that would require a purchase order. That's something the auditors were here. They mentioned was making sure we have purchase orders. So something we want to update. 3 written bids will be needed for any purchase over $25,000. Section 14, operating expenses over 25,000 will require 3 written bids. There were separate amounts listed for purchase limits and then operating expenses. So this is the day-to-day stuff. That operating expense, I think, was from $750 to $2,000 required 3 phone bids. Anything over $2,000 required 3 written bids. I think this needs to get ridden because anything really Derek spent down in the electric department is over $2,000. A spool of wire is $8,000 and going up. So it just hinders our process to make sure we have items in stock. Let's see here. The city administrator may request written bids for anything under 25,000. So if there's special object we're looking for, it's not a given that we're just going to go with one. I would recommend we go for multiple bids in certain situations. And then section 15, requirement to contract with McKed for grants increased from 10,000 to 100,000. To me, 10,000 is a very small limit to get McKed involved. With staff here can easily handle grants under $100,000. Over that amount, it does start to get tricky. Those are usually federal grants that require a lot more paperwork. Another item in here is that the finance policy doesn't actually address travel or reimbursement. It does touch on it in the employee handbook, but doesn't mention it in here. So.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What shall I get things on?
Yeah, who thought of this and why?
So what are the reasons for the changes?
Yeah, these increases, I mean,
They're very high.
they're very high.
They're compared to other cities in Oregon, they're actually low. I did reach out to other states, like other cities. I heard back from about 20 of them. Where did my note go? 8 of the cities between the population of 1,000 and 5,000, their average limit was $45,000.
So say those populations again.
From 1,000 to 5,000.
1,000 to 5,000, and what was the? You said
their average was 45,000
for what?
as the purchase limit before council had to approve.
So it's a big change for us, but it's actually in line with what other cities our size.
Yes. Correct. There was one city, Waldport, population 2,200. Their limit's 150,000. I wasn't gonna ask for that.
That's a little,
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I took that one out of the map.
that's an outlier. for
Yeah.
sure.
Councilman Miller, do you have any other questions you want to ask?
Well.
So I guess the other part of your question was, why are we making this change? I mean, it kind of like, where did it come from? But why are we making this change? Because it doesn't seem like you're bringing a lot of stuff to us as far as purchasing requests that I've seen since I've been on council either.
Correct, yeah. And I'll be honest, yeah, this policy is not being followed. Those purchases over 2,500 are not going in front of council. They're just general operating expenses that need to be done.
Can you give some examples?
Let's see here, Sheldon needed to have our outlet pipe inspected, from the treatment plant out to the river, that was $5,000. We got a quote for it, we moved forward with it. It's just an operating expense we move forward with.
So rising costs have just pushed
Correct,
this
yeah.
policy to where it's no longer really practical.
No,
And we're no longer following it. We need to update the policy so we can follow the policy.
yes, correct.
Jordan,
Any other questions?
do you know when? If the numbers were changed in 2017, or this was just when it was last kind of
I think it was,
adjusted
so this,
somewhere, because.
I'm not sure it was last changed, and it was last reviewed in 2019.
Yeah, and this says July 2017 was adopted, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a version that was basically the same that was adopted before this.
Correct, yeah, I don't know what that version before looked like.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I could like. 2017 to now. Inflation is just, it's way different, but I don't know if we're. $20,000 different. On some of these things. Like a factor of 10 different.
Mhm.
I just don't. I would like to see like. I guess some. Calculations on where, like, just, at least by just like basic inflation, like where these numbers take us to now.
Okay.
Cause that would be more helpful in like. Judging what these new numbers. Look like for us, because I could see. They do need to change, because we're not in 2017 anymore. Numbers are, the costs are way higher, but how much higher, I don't know.
I agree with that one.
Yeah, also, like Jeremiah down at the port. Their budget, theirs is way higher than ours, and his limit is 5,000. So, why 25,000?
Keller, did you, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Did you have any thoughts on this? Okay.
Well, I mean. I think this is completely reasonable, Crap is more expensive. I mean, after. COVID, the cost of steel, I mean, the cost of anything metal related is skyrocketed. And like, as Jordan mentioned, a spool of wire that has to be there. Like, they run out, they need to order it. Like, and that's a simple purchase, like,
Well, they need to order it before you.
well, yes, but
Yeah, before it runs out.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
like. That shouldn't come before us for a simple purchase of that realm, I don't.
This is also the burden, some of the work you guys have to do, because I don't think any of you want to actually sit here during a council meeting and. Approve individual purchases of 3,000, I mean, maybe you do $3,000 of just routine items we have to do to keep the city running.
I was just wondering, since you've been here, Jordan, has anything transpired that slowed down a decision because you had to wait for a city council meeting to bring to us?
Nothing. Nothing similar to this, trying to think maybe the strategic plan we adopted, but nothing, when it comes to day-to-day operations yet.
Well, it sounds like you guys have been making purchases that were outside the scope of what was allowed or our financial policy without our actual
Yeah.
approval, so. There are things that probably should have been brought to us, that would have, that I think was the question, right?
Yeah.
But you guys decided to move forward with the purchase without coming to council,
Correct.
because we needed to get it done. Can you
Correct.
talk about some of those examples?
Oh,
Talk about the,
really just day-to-day things. One of them, Derek's truck was repaired a couple months ago. It was 10 grand. I mean, they fixed it, we gotta pay it. It's an operating expense. Similar things like that, like I said, the items for the electric department. They ordered LED lights that council wanted at 25% change to LED lights. Those were, I think, $12,000, somewhere in there. So things that we're talking about in the budget.
so it just, it seems like if we were following the policy that's currently drafted, we would be spending a lot of our council meetings discussing ordinary expenses.
Correct.
The city operating as opposed to business that council should be really addressing,
Correct, yeah,
or unusual expenses.
yeah, correct.
So these limits are just to kind of change things, so that way we're discussing things that are unusual expenses, not day to day.
Yeah, so yeah, the backhoe, the new truck I brought to you guys, but just
Denise
things needed to
has her
operate.
hand up.
Oh, yes, Denise has her hand up, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. I came in a little bit late, and so you were sharing that these are similar limits to cities our size. Is that right, Jordan? That you're proposing?
Slightly bigger, but less than 5,000.
Pardon?
Slightly bigger, but they were all less than 5,000.
Okay. And then, and so it sounds like we have been needing to spend like up to 12,000. And what could you presume, $25,000 might be? Can you give a guesstimated expense that might happen? Or up to?
I really can't, no. How I came up with the numbers based off, what we've had past experiences. Everything I've approved has been around $10,000-15,000 or less. Anything more than 25, I definitely wouldn't feel comfortable approving by myself. I'd send it to council. But I can't think of a specific item at the $25,000 mark.
Thank you. And the only other, I'll let us talk about this. The only other thing, if we're looking at changes, are we comfortable with the city committee financial policy in here? Are we already doing what it says or not?
We have been, yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, another thing is. When money is requested, so we don't have a financial officer now. And so. We don't get the financials up to date like we should, or used to. So. When these expenditures come up, we're supposed to actually be notified what's in the budget, and what's left. Here, we're gonna have money go out the door without a financial officer to tell us. And it is our responsibility to keep track of the money.
Are you referring to the reconciliations that are behind and us not really knowing where we are?
Anytime expenditures go out, we're supposed to be notified, how much is left in the budget.
And we have not been able to get an answer to that question.
Yeah.
And those
Getting those financials.
how are we with getting, closer to that?
He should, last I heard, he's reconciling August, but Carl's been focusing most of his work on the audit last few weeks to get that finished.
Which audit are we talking
The
about?
21-22 audit that at this point is almost a year behind. Overdue.
So, do we have any timeline, or can you?
I've been hounding him the last few weeks, and so I'm hoping, I really don't have a timeline, but I can see if he can switch gears to get something to us. If not the next council meeting, first one in November.
I think what you're saying is it's hard for us to actually review and approve purchases if we don't have any idea how much we have left in those funds.
Exactly.
I'm right there with you.
And so I would be really hesitant to pass anything like this until we're there. And we actually know.
What are your all's thoughts on that point?
Can this be updated anytime?
They can, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have to answer all the world's problems tonight. This is just discussion, so.
I-
Go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate, City Administrator Bennett, that you are trying to make our documents align with what we're actually doing. Because we're asking committees to do that, we're asking the port to do that, we're asking, and so I am in favor of increasing the limits so that we can follow our documents, but I would propose maybe a $15,000 instead of 25. And then, obviously, we inherited past due accounting that that I appreciate we're getting that done as well. But I also don't like to move forward saying we're not going to meet our documents. Let's make our documents meet the needs of the city. Jordan has shared some needs of the city, and they haven't exceeded 15,000, so I say up to 15. That's my opinion.
On that note, you think you could expand on that a little bit? And clarify, I guess, what limits we could, I mean, instead of jumping to 10,000 and 25,000, is there a lower amount that might be more agreeable to council that would at least get us so that we're in compliance with the policy right now?
And 15 could probably do it, yeah.
15 for city administrator, what about department heads?
For most of them. I think 7,000, somewhere in there. About half that.
I mean, really, all the department heads have to do is come to you if they're over that amount, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what if it was 5,000, they just have to pick up the phone and talk to you? before
Yeah, you
they
get
go?
they usually just walk in with the receipt, we talk about it, so yeah.
So that wouldn't necessarily slow things down.
No, no.
Okay, and then, anything over 15,000 would need to have council approval. And, purchase orders, that's something that we need to get in line anyway, correct?
Correct, yeah, yeah, it really has not been properly followed for years at this point.
And then the pre-written bids only over 25,000, was that also because of the limit you proposed for the city administrator?
Correct, yeah.
So that would maybe move that to 15?
Yeah.
What do you all think about making kind of an incremental change to at least get us so that we're not violating our policy to complete city business?
I like that a lot. Cause I know it needs to be increased, I mean, it just does, everything's gone up. After we talk about that, I wanna talk about section 15.
Anybody else have any other, like, what do you guys think? I feel like you're kind of against it until we have the reconciliations in place, but I don't wanna assume we can use that, right?
Right.
Councilman Miller's kind of wanting to hold it a little bit until we get reconciliations caught up. Councilman Keller, what are your thoughts?
I like Mr. Miller's idea of let's figure out our accounting and then let's revisit this and come to the numbers. Personally, I'm totally fine with the numbers as proposed by Administrator Bennett.
What if it takes us another 6 months to get our reconciliations complete in our accounting?
It'll take us another 6 months.
You're okay with the city then continuing to violate our financial policy, or do you want them to follow our financial policy as it's currently written and bring all of those purchases to council?
We should follow policy, but, we can also have a special council meeting as long as we have 24 hours notice, so. You know, if times like something comes up tomorrow, we
Yeah.
just had our meeting.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to wait.
As long as it's not right.
Or it's also, I mean, it's hard for us to realize the importance of changing this because these purchases haven't been brought to us either, right? We don't know how often this is actually happening. Councilman Compton?
I think the numbers need to change. at least a little bit before we, like, I agree that we need to figure out, like, reconciliation, we need to know how much we're spending and how much is actually in our bank account, but we also can't be violating our policy. And we don't really wanna slow everything down 2 weeks, a week. Cause what happens if it's a emergency session and we can't even get the full council here, then that has to be pushed, and then like you keep trying to do emergency sessions until you get met, and then we go past due on a bill, or we don't have a truck. Like, say the fire truck goes dead. We don't have an ambulance or something because we can't get an approval that within the time frame needed, and now we're sitting without something that is necessary.
So I just want to clarify that for right now, it would require council approval for any purchase over $2,500. Is that right?
Outside of a formal agreement. So like Jacobs, who operates our wastewater plant, they're $13,000 a month. The sheriff's office is $7,600.
Those are contracts.
Contracts, yeah. So just doing a quick little review of the register, the AP register provided for tonight. I see 3 transactions over that $2,500 limit. One of them is the fire bay door, that's $3,900, and then 2 of them were vehicle repairs. One for Derek's truck and one for, for the chief's truck, and then one for actually for the backup. So everything else was under that limit.
And we talked about the backhoe.
Yeah.
We talked about the door,
Mhm.
the fire station that was going under insurance, so I didn't.
Yes, insurance thing, minus $1,000. Yes.
Right. And then the other one would be the vehicle repair, which is kind of unusual.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like necessarily us reviewing those purchases would slow things down right now.
Not overwhelming, no.
So it seems like consensus, I see, Councilman Emily Breaker, you had some comments?
I am for raising the limits now because I am all about when we're finding mistakes in our documents and as we need to correct them, even if we have to go back in and change them again. And we can only change, there are so many, as we know from our strategic plan, that if City Administrator Bennett found this, and we found in our documents recently that it does take 4 council votes for a motion to pass regardless of the number of members present. So we have somebody missing tonight. I almost, due to family emergency, couldn't be here. So we could slow up purchasing a fire bay door or something. And I know that it matters, I believe, to Councilman Bennett, to City Administrator Bennett, that we're following our documents. So that's why I would like to make our documents accessible at this time, even if we have to change them again in 6 months and come up with a figure that's maybe not as high as listed that we all agree with. That's my opinion.
So it sounds like we're getting close to the end of our work session here. I just want to make sure I recap where we're at right now. Sounds like we have one person that's supportive of adjusting the purchasing limits right now. Is there anybody else? I think everybody else was kind of more along the lines of waiting till reconciliation is complete.
I think we should do it sooner rather than later. But we don't have to do it right now. Maybe it might be interesting to see how much more we start falling into the letter, how much more council gets bogged down by requests too, because we have a lot we want to get done. If all we're doing is approving daily tasks, we're not going to get what we want to get done.
Well, out of those examples that were presented,
That's just
1 month.
1 month's worth of examples, but
2 weeks.
two.
We run every 2 weeks.
But
So,
on there was
but you know what I mean, like,
this
if-
expensive vehicle repair, and I feel like that would have been something that we maybe wanted to have a conversation about. Like, do we want to repair it, or are we gonna perhaps look at replacement, like?
Yeah, exactly, where
So I guess I kind of,
I don't know how much, like, I still wanna know. Where these numbers get. Put more in the lens of inflation. And that would help make more decisions for me.
And another thing is that. These things can be put in the consent agenda, or we have a synopsis of it. And if there's a question on one of them, then we can pull it out and discuss it, otherwise, it's in the consent agenda, it just automatically gets passed. And we don't waste a lot of time on it.
I'm also okay.
so it sounds like not quite consensus, but the majority of council is in favor of tabling this until we have a better handle on our finances. Is that correct?
Do agree though with the recommendation of section 15.
And was that the one you want to come back to?
Yeah, I was just, my concern is that. I don't know how to say this. That we may not get grants because we're not perfect at grant writing. And so I just don't want that to happen because we're gonna try to do it ourselves. And then not be able to get the grant.
So this is the grant administration, not the grant writing. So we could still have McKay write them for us,
Okay,
which we pay for that service anyways, as part of our fees to them. But they would administer it, anything over $100,000.
I'm not following what administer means.
They would oversee it, they would be in charge of it, processing the paperwork, making sure it gets done on time, it would not fall on me or other staff.
I see.
Like the wastewater project is overseen by the plant, they handle everything, they do wage interviews, they do on-site inspections, everything.
What do you get a response from Justin Met on that? Peter tonight.
Yes, yes, she will, she might be virtual, but she will be here.
Yeah,
Who's that?
she is the executive director. Was that?
Okay. Anything else on this topic before we shut down our workshop? All right, let's close our workshop and take a. How long do we have till 7 o'clock? We have time for a short recess?
45 minutes. Okay, if everybody online has been closing this and opening it back up shortly, thank you.